Goodman. After serving 9.5 years in prison, environmental activist Jeffrey Luers is finally free. In June of 2001, Jeff Luers, then a 23-year-old environmental activist, was sentenced to 22 years and 8 months in prison. His crime? Setting fire to 3 light trucks at his Chevrolet dealership in Eugene, Oregon. He said he committed the act to raise awareness about global warming. The fire was put out with a regular fire extinguisher. No one was hurt. The damage to the cars totaled something like $30,000, $40,000. The cars were repaired and eventually sold. Jeff and his co-defendant, Craig Critter Marshall, were arrested minutes after the fire was reported. By the time of Jeff's trial a year later, he was facing 13 charges and 100 years in prison. In 2001, former Lane County Circuit Judge Lyle Velour sentenced Jeff to 22 years and 8 months in prison with no possibility of parole. Craig Marshall took a plea deal and served 4.5 years behind bars. Jeff Luers' case became known around the country and around the world. Amnesty International and the Eugene Human Rights Commission questioned whether his sentence was politically motivated. In 2007, the Oregon Court of Appeals overturned Jeff's sentence and reduced it to 10 years. Last week, on December 16th, Jeff Luers walked out of prison a free man. Just before today's broadcast, we spoke with Jeff Luers in a Democracy Now! Global broadcast exclusive. I spoke to him in Eugene, Oregon. Jeff, welcome to Democracy Now! I wanted to start by asking you how it feels to be free.
It's a bit of an adjustment, going from being stuck in a small cage to having run of the entire world at the moment. It's nice.
Your reflections right now, I mean, how long have you been out at this point?
A week.
And what have you been able to do in this week?
I've been able to spend a lot of time with my family, friends that I haven't seen in a really long time. I've been fortunate enough to be able to get out into the forest and start hiking again and just reconnecting with all the experiences that I haven't had for 9.5 years.
Let's go back in time for people who aren't familiar with your case. Talk about what landed you in jail, your original sentence being more than 22 years.
Well, in June 2000, I and my co-defendant, Craig Marshall, set fire to 3 trucks at Romania Chevrolet that resulted in my incarceration and conviction for arson, resulting in 22 years and 8 months in prison.
He plea bargained and served something like 4.5 years?
Yeah, he was offered a non-cooperation deal to take 5 years, and he was released after 4.5.
Why didn't you do the same? Why didn't you plea bargain? You weren't contesting what happened that you had set fire to these 3. Would you call them SUVs?
They were actually light trucks. But the difference is Craig's offer was for conspiracy. They wanted me to plead guilty to intending to cause physical harm to another person. And for years, the FBI had been trying to show that environmental activists were terrorists, and I didn't want to give them a victory by pleading to intent to harm someone. I chose to fight that all the way.
And you went before you chose a non-jury trial?
Yes. There was an arson at the same dealership days before my trial was set to begin, and on the advice of my attorney, we decided that that would bias a jury of my peers against me too much to take the chance.
On reflection, do you think you should have plea bargained?
No, I honestly would have ended up serving the same amount of time. My final plea bargain was for 10 years, and I feel that taking it to trial and serving the time that I did has been more beneficial to my struggle and my personal life.
What is that struggle, Jeff?
Well, it's slightly changed over the years as the politics and recognition of climate change and global warming have changed. But I was heavily active in forest defense in the late 90s and in 2000, and that carried over into wanting to protect the larger environment and bring attention to global warming and climate change at a time when there wasn't much news about it and it wasn't really in the public spectrum.
When you talk about forest defense, explain what you did in the late 90s and in 2000. Explain, for example, tree sitting.
Yeah. I and a small group of friends helped establish the Fall Creek Tree Sit just outside of Eugene, Oregon in 1998. And it grew into one of the longest tree sitting campaigns that the United States has seen. Ultimately resulted in saving 96 acres of old-growth forest. That campaign was really instrumental in building an environmental movement here in the Northwest.
You actually sit in the trees. Explain what a tree sit is for people outside the Northwest.
Basically, it's a small piece of plywood suspended through ropes at the top of a tree. They tend to be several hundred feet high, connected by ropes to other tree sits so that you never have to touch the ground in order to get around or defend the forest. And you live there 24/7. Sometimes some campaigns will have a single sitter that will stay throughout, such as someone like Julia Butterfly. Other campaigns will cycle their sitters, so there's constantly someone fresh, able to move around and defend the forest.
So how did you go from tree sitting to setting fire to these light trucks at the car dealership?
I was active in civil disobedience and direct action for many years, and didn't see it being as fruitful as I felt that it should be. Through my encounters with law enforcement, I saw that there was a lot of deceit and deception in the manner in which they dealt with protesters and sweeping aside any type of redress of grievance. And ultimately, I decided that it was better to make a media spectacle to get my message across and draw attention to issues that I felt are incredibly important and affect every human being on this planet.
And so why did you target this car dealership? What exactly did it mean to you?
It was twofold. Partially, I was attempting to bring attention.
We're talking to Jeffrey Luers, having a little problem with the sound there. We're going to come back to this interview in a minute. Again, Jeffrey Luers was released on December 16th after almost 10 years in prison. His crime, setting fire to 3 light trucks at a car dealership in Eugene, Oregon. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. We'll be back in a minute.
Houses and rows. I had asthma, that's how it goes. When you're in LA, there are cars everywhere. See the sky and smell the air. I left home, looked around, trying to find some solid ground. I found life in the northern wood, and I knew that this was good. I saw the dozers, the death machines, tearing apart everything green. I built a platform, sat in a tree, said if you're taking her down, then you're taking down me. I saw the highways, I saw the mall, I saw the eagle, heard the clarion call. Voices of reason were talking to me, so I burned down a couple of SUVs. 23 years, 23 years. Among the words and the deeds, in the war for the West, a chapter was written, and I was the test. To shut us all up and drive us apart, all who have life and love in our hearts, the judge did the math.